from the Salvation Army National Headquarters,
this is the Fight for Good podcast.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Fight for Good podcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Colonel Tim Foley, coming to you from Alexandria, Virginia, national headquarters of the Salvation Army in Old Town, Alexandria, right across from us. The Potomac River is our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. With me today, as always, my partner in crime when it comes to these podcasts and when it comes to all the things that we deal with in the publications department, our War Cry editorial director, Mr. Jeff McDonald.
Greetings, Colonel. Great to be with you. As usual, thank you for your influence in all you do.
Well, you're welcome. Do you happen to have a quote for us today?
I don't have a quote today. I thought we'd rely on Captain Satterlee for our inspiration.
This is true, and we also have with us, before we introduce our guest, once again, working all the bells and whistles and making this all sound right and pulls it all together, is our producer, Elizabeth. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Before we went and pushed the record button here, we had a little bit of banter at a time, and it's always kind of fun to talk with Elizabeth because she teaches us old codgers, Jeff and myself, a lot of things about the technology, but we had the chance to introduce to her the concept of what a spaghetti Western was. And if you don't know what a spaghetti Western is, well, we encourage you to just Google it up and you can learn right along with Elizabeth. But Elizabeth, it's always a joy to be with you, and thanks for all you do.
Thanks.
That's always great. So today, in our podcast today, we're speaking with another key member of our team, and we have not had her on our podcast yet, but Captain Jamie Satterlee is our new editor of Peer Magazine. And today, this podcast is a chance for our listeners, to get to know our new editor, and also for you to celebrate with us the second birthday of Peer Magazine. So we welcome Captain Jamie Satterlee to the Fight for Good podcast. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Sure.
Yeah. So I'm Jamie. I'm a cradle Salvationist, been a part of the Salvation Army since birth. My parents are Salvation Army officers, pastors. And so, as a young person, I would have said that being a Salvation Army officer is the last thing that I want to do. But, God's ways are not our ways. And so here I am. This is our 15th year of officership this year. So here this summer, I'll trade out my captaincy to become a major. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Oh, that's awesome. We have to start calling you major. We'll start, we could start now, just so that we can practice, and getting you a little bit more comfortable with that role, so it's not so traumatic.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be an adjustment, but we did 7 years as a corps officers, local administrators in Salvation Army units, and then 7 years in direct youth ministry in Georgia and in Florida, which is honestly where my heart is. I love youth ministry. And so I'm really excited as the editor of Peer to get to kind of stay in this youth bubble, albeit in a completely different capacity. So that's me. That's what I'm doing. Also, I should probably say I have an incredible husband, Captain Matt Satterlee, and two very wonderful daughters who I am proud to be their mother. Also, a dog child who I love her dearly as much as my kids, which probably says a lot about me.
Well, if anybody's been around Lady Bird, they would fall in love with her. I know that I have fallen in love with her, as we've had the privilege of taking care of her for a couple of times when you and your family were out of town. And also the fact that you named her Lady Bird after my favorite animated series, King of the Hill. So I think that's great.
Yeah, a little nod to our Texas heritage.
So you and your husband and you guys are doing now. You're working with Elizabeth. I think you're on your 6th or 7th episode. We want to tell our listeners we have another podcast that was one of our goals this year that we've been able to give birth to. But that's the Battle Line. That's the Battle Line podcast, and so you can download that podcast and get to know Captain Matt and Jamie as they deal with lots of different things in youth culture together. And your husband, Captain Matt, he's just a lot of fun. We appreciate having him on board. He is our National Youth Secretary and handles a lot of things on the curriculum side with Corps cadets and junior soldiers material and the character building programs and whatnot, and also just national youth sort of things that are happening. But we're really glad that you guys are here. And basically, what we wanted to do in this podcast is just to remind our listening audience that we do have a very, very important magazine that rolled out 2 years ago. So why don't you tell our listeners today, just to give them a little bit of refresh. What's Peer Magazine all about?
Yeah, so the Peer Magazine is the Salvation Army's youth publication. It is a print magazine. We also have an online presence, both on our website and on social media. And kind of our Peer mission says that by addressing topics related to faith and community and culture, the mission of Peer is to ignite a faith conversation that will deepen biblical perspective, faith, and holy living. So we kind of believe that, even things that people might term secular or may not seem to have an intersection with faith, that all of these things do. You can have faith conversations about these things and to really kind of look beyond the surface and see, we call it like, what's the thing beneath the thing? And so it's kind of our goal to ignite those conversations. We certainly want to disciple our readers to increase them and encourage them on in their faith and in their personal holiness. And so we do that through this print media publication.
So Jeff, I want to bring you in here a little bit because I think you can give a little insight on the development and kind of the original idea of Peer Magazine, kind of the roots of where it came out of. I was in the middle of the transition. I was the editor-in-chief not pro tem, but just kind of, I came in the November of 2018, and we launched the magazine in January of 2019. Can you tell our listeners, Jeff, a little bit about the genesis of how this magazine was developed?
The Army, of course, has a tradition of working with young people, encouraging young people in their walk in life and with God. And part of that was a commitment to a magazine called Young Salvationists, which went through several iterations over the decades. The last one being, we shortened the name to YS. And primarily it was to encourage young Salvationists in their walk, in their commitment to faith and their experience in the Army. But with the advent of, with generational shifts, the coming of Gen Z, we realized, or the leaders of the Army realized, the importance of connecting with the rising generation, and recognizing also that this generation is distinct, has distinct qualities, opportunities, outlooks, perspectives, and we tried to figure out, how best to address that audience, and also to look beyond simply Salvation Army circles to appeal to a wider audience, knowing that that Gen Z generation did not have periodicals per se specifically targeted for them, designed for them, especially considering the male population among that, as well as females, of course. So the thought was to create a magazine that would appeal to that generation, and much research went into it, much consultation, figuring out what the content should be to address that generation, what the Army's perspective should be in it, and also what would appeal. And obviously in this day and age that encompasses not just a printed publication, but an online presence as well, a robust presence, one that's interactive, one that's social media savvy and helpful. So the result, I think, is quite. It's innovative in that the format is unique, the paper is unique, but the content especially is unique, and the emphasis on design in this book is really quite aesthetically pleasing and strong. So there's a lot of planning that went into it. Excuse me, and the result I think is quite powerful. Just looking at the current issue of January 2021, it deals with identity and what goals that Gen Z should have. What goals should matter? Do they matter? What does the future look like for Gen Z people? So we're really excited to see the evolution of it. And we did consult with outside designers, and we ran a lot of surveys with Salvation Army audiences to help define the content. So I'm just curious to Captain Jamie, what topics, what concerns are you trying to focus on in this publication?
Yeah, so we really try to stay kind of in tune with the things that are important in Gen Z, what Gen Z is talking about currently, and to address those concerns. We have articles that are both, I would say that all of our articles have faith content in them. That's part of our goal, right? And so, but not all of them are necessarily faith centric, I guess. Sometimes it's things like you said, it's like goal setting, which may not be exactly faith centric, but faith certainly has a part to play in that. And so when we're developing content, we are looking for a balance of those things that directly kind of help us grow in holiness and in our faith walk, but also things that apply to other parts of our everyday life. I'm glad you shared about our January issue, because I think I was really excited about it. I think it really plays into a lot of what Gen Z is facing with identity and all of those kind of things. But we kind of asked ourselves, we have 3 feature articles every month, and the 3 articles for January basically answer these questions: who am I? What am I doing? And how do I get there? Who am I? Identity. What am I doing? What's my purpose? And how do I get there? How do I achieve goals? Goal setting. So those are the 3 features. And that's kind of, not every month is sculpted out that way, where it's that kind of direct correlation between each feature. But we try to hit all aspects of culture and of everyday life and of faith. And, so that's our content. We have a fantastic team who is always on the ball with, keeping their finger on the pulse of what's going on with Gen Z. They are Gen Z, many of them. So that's certainly helpful to a millennial like me, making sure that we're staying on target with our mission.
I think we would be amiss if we did not pay tribute and sincere thanks to previous administration that was willing to take a risk to change a magazine that had a particular audience and had a particular message and was effective for years. And to make this shift, I know this was done in conjunction with the previous editor-in-chief, with the YS editor, Captain Pam Maynor, along with just a bevy of different people that kind of did the groundwork to make sure that this magazine would be launched and that this would continue to be a success. And I know, Captain Jamie, you are grateful to how you inherited. I mean, you inherited a very well-established system for producing this magazine from Captain Pam and the staff, and you have just kind of wonderfully just slid in and continue it on. Of course, you're giving it a little bit of your own nuances and touches.
Yeah, I would say so. I had the first time I met Captain Pam was actually as when she was doing Young Salvationist, and I was chosen to be the Southern Territories representative for Young Salvationists. So I did, had assignments every month and would write and that kind of thing. And so that's how I got to know her, and even then appreciated her heart for young people and for really making sure that they were discipled using this avenue. And she certainly did pour her heart and soul into the transition into peer. And I could not have asked for a better transition. The way that she set everything up was fantastic. And so that's great for somebody like me to come into a place where, she just everything that she did was her heart and passion was in it. And so it's exciting to be able to come in and to pick up where she left off. And I owe her a huge debt of gratitude.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think it took several months before you actually met your staff in person because of all the COVID restrictions that we've been under.
Yes, actually, and to be fair, I've only met one of them. Actually had a conversation in person with one of them. The other two I've seen at a distance, at a thing, but weren't able to actually speak with them. And so that has been an odd part of this transition, only knowing your people through a computer screen. But they are fantastic, very sold out to what they do and dedicated, and they've just been amazing.
Jeff, I'm always appreciative whenever a new issue comes out of Peer and of the War Cry and whatever else that we're producing. I don't want to overemphasize it, but there are significant challenges that we face in our production of these magazines. And I hope our readers and listeners just don't take that for granted. It just does not magically kind of happen. There's a lot of stuff that happens on so many different levels behind the scenes. And I'm grateful to you, Jeff, for your vision and how you're continuing on, and the challenges that Captain Jamie inherited just kind of coming in the middle of this pandemic and being responsible for this magazine.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it does come down to heart. I do think of Captain Pamela Mainer's heart for young people and how she did pour so much energy into creation of Peer, and her predecessor, Major Amy Reardon, another outstanding editor of YS back in the day, and now Captain Jamie is part of that great train. I think of Newton's expression: he could see so far because he stood on the shoulders of giants. And I think that's true for us in our work. Just even the ascertaining the name, coming up with the name Peer, was a study in surveying and getting opinions and getting administration and leaders in the Army to consider it. And I think it's a brilliant name. And I do believe that the Army has much to speak into today's world from its perspective. And I think that it's a bold move for Peer to try to, continue to disciple those young people in the Salvation Army, but also to reach out beyond it to attract people to what the subhead or the byline for Peer is, which is faith, community, and culture. Is that right, Captain Jamie?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what are you planning for the future for Peer in terms of individuals you'll be interviewing or topics you'll be covering?
Yeah, so we're, that's one of the things that has been an adjustment is the how far ahead, we work. And it's kind of interesting where, you think, these are things that are happening today. I should write about this. But then realizing that in production time, we're actually, 3 or 4 months ahead. So that's been a little bit of a kind of a mind switch for me. But we have some great plans for 2021, looking ahead, thinking about things like sustainability, which we know is an important topic to Gen Z, things in our, marches Women's History Month. So we have some articles coming about on that, like the Salvation Army stance of women in leadership. We have a little bit of a unique position somewhat in the church on women in leadership. And so exploring those kind of things, kind of shifting our perspective on people with disability awareness. I'm just trying to go through cancel culture, which is a huge thing right now in society, kind of talking through that kind of thing. Also practical things that apply to our readers, like, finance and setting a budget and getting started off the right foot, when you're coming out of college, making that entry into adulting, making sure that we're setting a great foundation so that they have as good a launch point as they possibly can. All those kind of things. We're looking forward to a summer series, hopefully on the spiritual disciplines, which will be all online because of our production schedule. We do one print magazine in the summer, so that will be primarily an online feature. I would say, though, the thing I'm most excited about in 2021 is kind of our focus or our emphasis on mental health awareness. We're trying some new things. So in the print edition of Peer, we've had a column called #the moment. And in the past, this has been a place where we would ask a question on social media, like, how are you supporting your friends while socially distant? Or how are you giving thanks this year? We would put that out there on social media, and the responses would come in, and it would be featured in our print column. Well, we've reworked that space a little bit starting in the January edition, and it's kind of transitioning into #mental health moments, where we're kind of addressing these different mental health challenges that are affecting Gen Z and beyond. So in the January column, it's seven self-care practices when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed. And so that's kind of a new feature that's coming into Peer. But we're even moving that into our online space as well. And so we've engaged 4 licensed professionals to write on mental health topics for our online content. So every month, about the middle of the month, a new article will be released only in our online space that will address a topic pertaining to mental health. So for January, the first column, it's how to recognize if you yourself are suffering from anxiety. That might be like a little bit beyond a typical, what we would consider a typical level of anxiety. And then if you do recognize that in yourself, how to address it and how to get help. And so, mental health, I think was already coming into the spotlight. Our understanding was changing of it. And then when the pandemic occurred, it kind of just threw everything even deeper in that sphere. And so we really want to help young people learn about it, take the shame and the stigma maybe that's existed in the past away from it, and then figure out how we can get help and move forward to live a whole life in the way that God intended for us to do.
I should point out, though, that now Peer has reached its 1-year anniversary. Is that correct?
So we just actually in January we celebrate 2 years.
I mean, 2 years. Yes.
Yeah, it's our 2-year birthday. That's right. And so it's very exciting. Second birthday.
We should
entering the
point out.
toddler phase.
We should point out it's gotten great traction, and that Peer received awards of excellence from the Evangelical Press Association last year for its work. So it was, recognized for it. And it is, as I said, people wonder, well, why have a print magazine in this day and age? But print is a technology into itself, and it is portable, and it is unique. And we do use sustainable inks and paper, and are careful that what the ingredients that go into it are recyclable. So we are conscious of that. But again, it is both print and online. I think the peermag.org website is really powerful in itself.
Yeah, it is. And we do feature content online that's not found in the print edition. So they're, they're connected. They're parts of the same world, but they're, it's not the exact same content on both sites. Interestingly, I just read an article not too long ago that said that Gen Z, we're seeing an uptick in the reading of printed materials from Gen Z because of some of the lack of trust, I would say, because online, with Wikipedia and things like that, anybody can just edit or say what they want. And so they're kind of turning back a little bit to print media, having a little bit more faith, I guess, in the reporting that is done there. So it's interesting to see how that will continue to develop, through as Gen Z ages, and then what happens with the generations coming behind them. But yes, we do hit both, because we know there are some who prefer the print medium, and there are some who prefer, Gen Z is the first generation that's, technology has always been there for them. So we want to make sure that we're hitting those needs as well.
Jeff, Peer Magazine also received a nomination for a national award through, I think it was Print Media. I can't remember the actual group name, but it was supposed to be awarded in April. I think we were nominated for a redesign. The company that helped to relaunch submitted it, and we were in a category with the redesign of other magazines like the Atlantic, Sojourners. I think there was 2 other magazines. So the concept of this magazine, I don't ever want us to just take it for granted. Of course, I struggle with the whole "a prophet is without honor" sort of thing. But what our magazine does, we're one of the only few Christian youth magazines that is targeting the Z generation in particular. Last year, Captain Pam and myself were asked to do a workshop at the Christian Leaders Association event, and that was canceled because of COVID. But I know, Captain Jamie, we've been asked to come back, and you're currently working on a workshop, and we're hoping that in April of this year that we can explain to the Christian community how this magazine did a reboot and relaunch, and like where we're going in helping the very digitally and very savvy Z generation. I'm excited to see what we're going to be able to share with that.
Yeah, I am too. It'll be great to be there. And you're right. There's not a lot out there right now as far in Christian magazine sphere for this age group. There is Focus on the Family has the Brio magazine, but that one's aimed directly at girls. And so the market is slim across the board, but even specifically for males. And so, we feel like this is a great place for the church to say, like we have the ability to fill in this gap. And so we're excited to be able to do that, and to stand and say, like, hey, here's what's going on in the world. This is how it relates to our faith. Let's have a conversation.
I think it's important for our listeners to remember, and our readers to remember, is that the footprints of that the national publications go, where these magazines go, are incredibly probably hard to imagine sometimes. We deal in the Salvation Army with a lot of kids that are at risk, kids that are in the margins, kids that are neglected, kids that are forgotten. And those of us that have been involved with this pastoral ministry to younger generations over time, because I was a divisional youth secretary when the X generation was kind of really coming in its prime, and we've seen the millennials rise, and you see the Z generation with the complexities of life itself. The footprint, Captain, of your magazine is very, very powerful. And we're only starting to scratch the surface to see the effects of what Peer Magazine is bringing.
Yeah, that's right. We do, we do have a widespread circulation. We're just under 30,000 print editions a month. Some of those are distributed to Salvation Army units across the country, but we also have what we call single subscriber households. Also, one of the areas that we were really getting into and had some traction on was getting into universities that subscribed through their student centers, but also individual subscribers on college campuses. That kind of paused a little bit when the pandemic began, and students had to go home. But that's one of the things that will continue in the future, hopefully. But then also our online following. As of 2 days ago, we had just under 6,000 followers on social media and on our website. So we're working more and more on our online presence there as well with Elizabeth, who's our media manager. Always, evaluating and reworking. It's always changing. The digital world is changing, rapidly every day. There are new things coming out or new trends and all these kind of things. And so Elizabeth helps us keep our eye on that and helps us, gear our content towards things like TikTok, which is the whole crazy world.
Jeff, I recall when we launched the magazine, there was some initial pushback I received from some individuals saying that, they don't understand this magazine, whatever. And I was just like, look, if you're over 30, this is not a magazine for you. And that's been really our audience is not for the well-versed person that's been along the journey. Our audience is for a very sharp, growing, younger generation who's very attuned to a lot of different things spiritually, politically, economically, diversity, a lot of different issues. And Captain, I know that you're boldly just taking the mantle that Captain Maynard has laid down, and you've picked it up, and you're carrying forward to make sure that we're doing all that we can to reach that current generation.
Yeah, right. So Gen Z, it is a unique audience. They're diverse, they're digitally native, concerned, passionate. Their approach to religion is different than anything we've seen before. I know when Peer was being developed, one of the things that really drove at the heart of choosing this audience of Gen Z is that compared to other generations, according to a Barna study, Gen Z identifies as atheist at a rate double that of the general population. So with the general population, it's about 6%. With Gen Z, it's about 13%. There are some interesting studies about how this has fluctuated a bit during the pandemic, which is fascinating, something we're definitely keeping our eye on. But Gen Z is an incredible generation. They get a lot of flack, but they are wonderful and unique and caring and passionate. And I'm excited to be able to kind of speak into that with our magazine. One of the things I would say that really kind of is my passion and kind of drives what I do is that with Gen Z, in a way that we've never seen before, the church can't afford to be silent on topics that we may have shied away from in the past, whether that might be more personal issues like sex or societal issues that other generations might see as political and not something that the church should be involved in. This generation is looking to the church to stand up and say, like, this isn't right, or to say, like, hey, this is how we see this issue. This is how it affects our holiness and affects our faith. But I think even more than that, Gen Z is not interested in a church that just talks, but doesn't put action behind it. So my goal for Peer really is to address a whole wide spectrum of topics, certainly, but not to shy away from difficult ones. To be honest, to be real, to be deep, not to settle for surfacey, like quote unquote Sunday school answers, which is really hard when your features are only 800 to 1,200 words. Clearly, you can tell that I am not a person of few words, so it is challenging sometimes to be able to cover things in a deep and real way. But we are determined not to be silent about these things. They have to be addressed. I believe my thing as a pastor, as a parent, as an editor, is that there are answers and messages coming to our kids from the world. And if we don't speak into them as the church, then we are shirking our duty. Somebody is going to be teaching them. And so if we want faith to inform, if we want them to have a biblical worldview, then the church has to stand up and talk about it. We cannot afford to remain silent. Otherwise, the messages will be coming completely from the world and not from the church. And to me, that's unacceptable.
Well, I think this is where we're going to cue the altar call in from music. And, I appreciate your passion and the privilege that I've had to work with you and Captain Matt the last couple months. It's just amazing. how God is in control with who the next editor of Peer was going to be, and how you've taken this and where you're going to go with it. And we're just excited for you. We thank you for being part of our editorial team and having a love for Jesus and a love for other people. I want to just pledge our continued support. And I was thinking as you were talking there, there's you can go broader and deeper and longer with articles, especially with what we're doing, expanding our online motifs, because we're actually exploring more of that with our war cry. We are limited on our word counts at times, and just kind of look and design of the actual printed magazine. But the whole digital world opens up lots and lots of great opportunities for us, and we're getting feedback constantly from all sorts of people about the effects, especially during the pandemic. Our publications have had a great impact on a whole new generation, and we thank you for that. And I would even throw in, you're also thinking in the back of your mind, the generation that's after the Z generation, the Alpha generation, that's kind of infiltrating our elementary and junior high schools now.
Yeah, that's right. So, Gen Z we're talking about 1997 to 2012. So right now that's ages 8 to 23, which is really broad. But even beyond that, there's a new generation coming up behind them, and so as Gen Z ages and moves on, Alpha is coming up, and so we're going to have to look at each generation is unique in its own way. Gen Z is certainly different from millennials. And so we don't expect Alpha to be to break the mold on that. They're going to be different from Gen Z. And so how are we going to take this publication and rechange it? We know certainly that no matter what the differences in the generations, the truth remains that there is a place for the church to speak into the issues of today. And so while we may rethink our methods, the underlying message that Jesus is the Savior for all mankind is there, and the ability to preach that and how that affects our everyday life. So it's exciting. Always changing, always something different. Can be a little bit mind-boggling sometimes, but what a great opportunity and mission we have.
Really. And, thumbing through the January issue, your passion, what you're saying comes through. It's colorful. It's full of information. It has video game reviews and, cultural things for people to consider, but also strong articles like this quote from one of the articles in it. Our gifts aren't just for the gathering of saints in a building, although that is valid and important. I certainly don't want to downplay our gatherings. The intention here is to expand our view of the operation of God's gifts. And I think that's what you're helping accomplish through this magazine.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there is. That's one of the things I love about Peer is that there is something for everyone in its pages. If you are, a podcaster, there's podcast reviews. If you're a gamer, there's video game reviews. There's, ways to broaden our understanding about what the Salvation Army is doing, not just in America, but across the world. And these are many times in our panorama column initiatives led by young people, which I don't think we give enough credit for. Like, young people are not the church of tomorrow. They are the church of today. And so we need to acknowledge and celebrate their contributions. And so there's that there in Panorama. Our features change each month. We highlight in our profile column Salvation Army young people from around the globe who are sold out for Jesus, what they're doing. Their stories are all unique and different, but you can see Jesus at the center of each of them. And it's a lot of fun.
Tell our listeners in closing, Captain Jamie, how people can be encouraged to contribute to Peer Magazine.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find our website is peermag.org, or you can find us on just about every social media platform. We're peer.magazine, but if you just type in Peer Magazine in your search feature there, you'll find us. But we also we accept submissions. We want to help develop the talents of young writers, young illustrators, young photographers. So there is a submissions page on our website. In fact, today we got a great article yesterday, and I just edited it this morning for our online content from a young Salvationist in the South about his experience with Rwandan genocide, which
Wow.
is an interesting topic. And so we certainly want to help develop the gifts that God has given. And so that can be done through our submissions page. But I would encourage you to engage with us online, Peer.Magazine on all social medias, even TikTok.
Well, Captain, we thank you. We salute Captain Pam. We thank all of the previous writers and contributors and illustrators to Peer Magazine. We're grateful, Jeff, to you and your staff for, because there's a lot of interaction that happens between the WarCry design team and the Peer design team. And I'm grateful to Elizabeth as our media manager, who does a lot with making sure that Peer Magazine the content is out there. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Colonel. And also I should give a shout out to MetaLeap Creative, who helped with the original design of Peer, and to our other vendors, including Quad Graphics, Impact Production, who are instrumental in helping us be good stewards of the Army's resources in what the work we do.
Yeah, MetaLeap was an amazing company to work with. They are a company that works with major magazines, and they were very excited to work with the Salvation Army. We were really grateful for them in the infant stages of this. But we're going to continue on, and the Salvation Army's national publications has a voice of influence and a voice of hope and a voice of innovation. A voice of addressing the realities of the social evils that befall us, but most importantly, give us the opportunity to share the life-changing message of the gospel of Jesus Christ to folks who would never darken the doors of any church anywhere. So we're grateful to you, Captain, for you and your staff. Continue to keep up the good fight. Continue to fight for good, and also to keep the battle lines, tight and going forward, carrying the gospel. Well, that's going to end this episode of the Fight for Good podcast. Be sure to subscribe to Fight for Good wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget our sister broadcast, The Battle Lines, featuring Captain Jamie and her husband, Captain Matt Satterlee, and as they discuss youth culture. And don't forget to follow the WarCry and Peer Magazine on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We want to thank you for taking a few moments of your day for listening to this episode. And until next time, this has been the Fight for Good podcast. Bye for now.
Subscribe to Fight for Good wherever you listen to podcasts.